What is up, Pacer Nation? Welcome to the Pacer Pulse podcast, the heartbeat of Indiana basketball. And today, I want to do the last installment of the Player Story series. Yes, counting today, I've done 8 players. And if you haven't listened to the past ones, I advise you to go check them out. Very interesting. But the last week, I did, I think, Johnny Furphy or Neesmith, whichever one of those two. But I've done Neesmith, I've done Johnny Furphy, I've done TJ McConnell, I've done Pascal Siakam, I've done Andrew Nimhard, and I've done Benedict Mathurin. And today, I want to do the final episode on none other than Tyrese Haliburton. And I think it's the perfect cap off to this series. And like I said, if you haven't heard the other ones, go check them out. I have them all posted on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. They're the short, quick listens, usually about 20 minutes or less. I try to keep them not too long, but it's been a fun series for me to kind of dig in and learn about these guys even more, hear about their backstories, and you could see why the Pacers have really valued character from guys that they always bring in, and you see it more and more after you hear these guys' stories, and it just makes that much sense because we have so many high character guys on this team, and you can see how valuable that really is. And after hearing Haliburton's story, you could see why he is such a foundational piece and why they really took a big bet on him when they traded for him. I mean, obviously it was a no-brainer trade, but you could see why they had so much belief in Haliburton, the front office, and this organization. And from what he's already done for us so far in his NBA career with the Pacers, I mean, he's taken us to the highest of highs that we could have ever possibly imagined. And I couldn't think of a better guy to have as the face of our team than Tyrese Haliburton. So, without further ado, let me get into his story. So, Tyrese Haliburton's basketball journey almost took a turn before it even started. Back when he was a skinny freshman at Oshkosh North, I hope I said that right, Oshkosh North, he showed up late to practice. Not because he overslept. The upperclassman who drove him in overslept, which meant Tyrese was late by default. His dad told him, "You can't control the clock now," and drove him to school knowing the consequences were coming. And the consequences were real. His coach, Frank Shade, I think that's how you say his last name, was old school to the core. Nearly 3 decades on the job, a no-nonsense, fundamentals first type who once had a short NBA stint himself, Shade sent Tyrese and the older player home, then made the whole team run sprints in the afternoon while the 2 latecomers sat in chairs on the sideline. So, if you play basketball, if you've ever been in that position or have had teammates be in that position, it's not fun at all. You feel awful about it, or you could tell they always feel terrible about it because it's not just you got to think about, it's your entire team. And Tyrese, he was so devastated by this. His dad remembers him crying, not because of punishment, but because he cared that much about his team. Then years later, Tyrese laughs about it now. Shade even told him he was the worst freshman he ever coached. A quote Haliburton proudly put in his senior yearbook. It's funny now, especially because the same worst freshman is now a 2-time All-Star leading the Pacers and starring on one of the biggest stages in the NBA last year during the finals. So just funny. I'm sure he regretted saying that after he's seen what Tyrese has become. And I'm sure they've talked, but it's just kind of a funny little story. And then growing up, Haliburton didn't have a backup plan. He wasn't thinking about being a lawyer, a teacher, nothing else. It was all basketball, period. That kind of commitment might make a guidance counselor nervous, but Tyrese believed his family believed with him. His parents, John and Brenda, gave everything they could so their kids had every opportunity. They weren't wealthy, but if Tyrese needed shoes, gear, or entry into a tournament, they found a way to make it happen. So he had complete support from his family, and obviously, from seeing Tyrese's dad at all the games and that iconic moment of him getting kicked out of the series against the Bucks because him and Giannis got into it was just hilarious too. But obviously, you see he's had so much support Haliburton has throughout his entire life with his parents, and that they're willing to do whatever it takes to support him and support his dream and just believe in him. And I think a lot of times that's what you really need the most is belief in yourself, but also from those that you love and your faith as well. But Oshkosh isn't known for pumping out NBA talent. Most of Wisconsin's pros come from Milwaukee. When Tyrese became an All-Star, he was actually the first one ever from the northeast part of the state to be an All-Star. His early years were filled with practices, tagging along with his dad's teams, and always having a basketball in his hands. He played up in age groups, played bigger positions because he was tall, and eventually landed at point guard, the role that unlocked everything. And as we know now, he is probably the best passing point guard in the NBA. I mean, I don't know if it's even close. Just his IQ and that alone, us Pacer fans know. And we've seen this year how much we've missed that, and it makes you appreciate Haliburton that much more. And hopefully, league wide, he gets that appreciation even more, considering how bad we are this year. And all the comments about him being overrated, all that was so overblown. And I'm glad he really silenced the haters, and it's proven that case even more this year. But in high school, Haliburton helped Oshkosh North dominate. They went undefeated in conference his junior year before falling short in the state tournament. He came back even sharper as a senior, dropping 23 second-half points in the state championship to bring home a title. But despite all that, he still flew under the radar. He wasn't a five-star recruit with national hype. He was a three-star kid who Iowa State believed in early, and that changed everything. At ISU, he showed his playmaking instincts, leadership, and ridiculous IQ. By his sophomore year, he was on NBA radars as a future lottery pick. Sacramento, as we know, took him 12th overall, and essentially the steal of that draft. I mean, if you did a redraft now, Haliburton would easily be top 3 of that draft. I mean, I think it was the same draft as Anthony Edwards, so he would be right after Anthony Edwards. I mean, I don't think that's even close. And in that draft, I'm pretty sure James Wiseman was second, ironically enough. So I'm pretty sure I'm getting the right draft. So if I'm not, I'm sorry, but I'm pretty sure that's a draft where he went 12th. But easily top 3 pick if they redid that draft over again. And his fit right away with De'Aaron Fox already there, it wasn't a perfect long-term fit. So in 2022, the blockbuster trade brought him to Indiana, and the rest was history. He's become the face of our franchise. I mean, I'm not trying to be premature, but one of our best players of all time already. I mean, you can already probably say that, especially after that playoff run last year and what he did. That's why we can only pray and hope that he comes back better than ever from this Achilles injury. And we've seen guys do it. We've seen KD come back and still be as great as he is. And he's even taller. You would think it would be harder for him to recover from that. So, and the fact that Haliburton's already doing some on-court work. So that's something to be very encouraged about. But since landing with the Pacers, Haliburton has exploded into one of the league's elite offensive engines. His assist to turnover numbers are historic, literally rivaling Hall of Fame legends. Rick Carlisle trusted him from day one, and Tyrese responded by lifting the team's pace, unlocking the teammates he's had around him, and pushing Indiana back into playoff contention. And way beyond that, I mean, back-to-back conference finals, NBA finals appearance, when a lot of people thought our run was a fluke, even that year when we faced Boston in the conference finals, and then the fact that we answered that and knocked out all these teams and went on that historic, just unbelievable run. I swear, if we would have won that title last year, it would have been turned into a movie. The most improbable champions of all time. That's what I always think. But irregardless, it didn't happen, but still a magical run. But through all the attention, the contract, and the national exposure, Haliburton has leaned into his faith more than ever. He talked about how much more intentional he's been over the last couple years. Church, chapel, staying grounded, it all keeps him centered. And I think we can all relate to that if you have belief or faith in a religion and in Jesus. Everything, if you just have that in the center of your life, everything else just kind of falls into place. And it's really awesome to see that's influenced Haliburton's life here the last couple years, and it's what he's gonna need, especially going into the rest of his career, because especially with all these up and downs with him going through this Achilles injury, that's the one thing he can always lean on. But when kids ask him how to follow their dreams, he keeps the advice real. There's no shortcut. There's no magic formula. Work hard, stay focused, don't let praise or criticism define you, and trust the work you put in. From a late freshman at practice to the face of the Pacers and one of the NBA's brightest young stars, Tyrese Haliburton is living proof that belief, discipline, and effort can take a dream a long way. So, just a great little fun story behind Tyrese and where he came from, and just you could just see like he was always been counted out pretty much his entire career. Even on the Pacers now, he's still being counted out, but it's not unknown territory to him. He's shown to always be a good player, even if the national media or the national analysts, whatever it is, don't ever give him that sort of credit. I mean, it started back even when he was in high school. He was a 3-star recruit and didn't get the appreciation and love that he probably should have deserved. And then he goes to Iowa State and just dominates there, ends up being a lottery pick, and the rest was history. It's a really amazing story. And like I said earlier in this podcast, after hearing the story, you can see why the Pacers have really made him the face of the franchise, because who better to lead your franchise than a guy like that who's always proved the doubters wrong, who is always uplifting, having a smile on his face, or just being that positive influence around his team in the locker room. And I know even last year, he had that rough start to the season last year, and mentally you could tell like it was getting to him a lot. And I think even in that, I've heard this from other podcasts, but even in that television series on Netflix, he talked about how he even thought about stepping away from the game at one point during that part of the season. And I guess like the thing that's really awesome to see is how much he actually cares. Because a lot of these guys in the NBA, they don't care. They're just there to get a paycheck, get their money, and then they'll retire whenever they have to or can, and then they're just going on their way. Like, they're not passionate about basketball. But Tyrese is, and you can clearly see that. You can see how much he cares. And I think that trickles down to the rest of the team. And that's why we have guys like Nembhard, Neesmith, Matherin, Siakam, TJ, Obi, just like all these guys that you could tell like they just have that love for the game, and they have somewhat of that same mentality, or it at least trickles down from Haliburton. But it's awesome to see, and it's an awesome story to hear. And I had to end this series on Tyrese Haliburton. That was kind of my thought the entire time. My wife even brought it up to me, like, why don't you end it on Tyrese? And I was like, that's the perfect ending, the perfect ending. So I didn't need much more convincing after that. It was the right call. And I just think it's nice to hear his story again. And even though he's not playing this year, just how much we do miss him out there. And that I can't wait to see him next year. I can't wait to see us bounce back from this awful season, maybe with a high pick, with a starting center at some point, and just be reloaded for the team to be ready for when Tyrese is able to come back next year. And he's going to have a lot of time to recover. And I just hope that he can be back to 100% or even better than what he was before. And we know it's not guaranteed, but we know he's going to work hard. He's going to put in that effort to be better than ever, better than he ever was before. And I know I'm not alone, Pacer Nation. That was probably like the most tragic moment in basketball history, in my opinion, was when he tore his Achilles in that Game 7. Especially the way he was starting off. He was 3 from 3 from 3. He was just lights out. You could tell he was about to have just a phenomenal, historic game. And just to go out that way, I've always said that it was like the peak of our Pacers history, and then almost like the lowest point as well. Because Game 7 NBA Finals, highest point we've ever reached, but our star player tears his Achilles in Game 7. It's crazy how polarizing it is, and this year's kind of been just as polarizing in terms of how bad we are. We went from making the finals to being the worst team in the NBA, but I just know that once Tyrese comes back, our team, we're going to be back better than ever and still be in that mix to win a championship eventually. But I hope you guys really enjoyed this series. Like I said, if you haven't heard them all, I advise you to please go check them out. And like I said, there's about 8 episodes now. This is my last one. And I didn't put them all on YouTube. I've only done like 2 on YouTube because that was before I started fully posting on YouTube. So you're only gonna find them on the podcast platforms. So, but I really appreciate your guys' support, always listening, and please like, comment, subscribe on the YouTube channel. I always love to hear your guys' feedback or what you guys think of the team, the direction we need, and whatever it is, just any Pacer talk. And then if you could please follow the listening platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Leave a 5-star review. It means so much to me. Help me be able to grow this. I'm just a diehard fan like you guys who love the Pacers, who love just talking about the Pacers, honestly, and just having content about the Pacers. I love it, and I hope you guys do as well. But thank you for everything, Pacer Nation, and I will talk to you soon.